Hi everyone, today we'll be looking at cross multiplying. Here's today's FLT. Given an equation, I will be able to solve for x by cross multiplying. So what does it mean to cross multiply? To cross multiply is to start off with this. A over B equals C over D, and turn it into this format. A times D equals B times C. And how do we go from the original equation to the second equation? We cross multiply. We multiply across. So first, we multiply A and D. So we get A times D. And then we multiply B and C together. So we multiply across there as well. Notice how we have a cross. This is why we call this cross multiplication. We multiply across A times D and also B times C. Let's take a look at a numerical example. So to cross multiply is to start off with something like this. 2 over 3 equals 8 times 12. We first multiply across, so we have 2 times 12. And we have the equal sign and then cross multiply the other two numbers. 3 times 8. So we multiply numbers that are across from each other. So we do 2 times 12 and set it equal to 3 times 8. I draw these diagonal lines to cross multiply. And notice how the equation is still true because 2 times 12 equals 24, as well as 3 times 8, which also equals 24. So today we're going to use cross multiplication to solve for variables. Here's our first example. Cross multiply to solve for x. We have x over 9 equals 8 over 4. We want to solve for the variable x, and we're going to use cross multiplication to do so. We multiply x and 4 together, and we also multiply 9 and 8 together. So we have x times 4 equals 9 times 8. So we've cross multiplied. So when you're cross multiplying, you want to multiply the diagonals together. The x and the 4 are paired with each other. And on the other side, we have the 9 and the 8. So we've cross multiplied. Now let's take it step by step to solve for x. First, I'm going to simplify this equation a little bit. X times 4 equals 72 because 9 times 8 equals 72. And I want to isolate x, so I want to get rid of this times 4. We can do so by dividing both sides of 4, because division is the opposite operation of multiplication. And feel free to use your calculator for these examples. So what is 72 divided by 4? 18. So we've solved that x equals 72 divided by 4, which equals 18. So we solved for x and we found out that x equals 18. But how can we check our work? Let's write out the original equation that we started with. So we started off with x over 9 equals 8 over 4. But we can replace x with 18 because x equals 18. Now let's simplify both sides. On the left side, 18 divided by 9 is 2, and on the right side, 8 divided by 4 is 2. The equation is still true, so we know that we've correctly solved for x. By cross-multiplying, we were able to solve for the variable x. Let's look at another example. Let's cross-multiply to solve for x. 7 over x equals 3 over 9. We're going to multiply across, so diagonally. 7 times 9 equals x times 3. So 7 times 9 equals x times 3. Remember, for cross multiplication, we want to multiply diagonally. So the 7 and the 9 are paired together, and on the other side, x and 3. Now let's simplify this equation. We know that 7 times 9 equals 63. So this part right here becomes 63, and this equals x times 3. I want to solve for x. I want to isolate x. So what I'm going to do is divide by 3 on both sides. 63 divided by 3 equals 21. So 21 equals x. This is the same thing as saying that x equals 21. So we were able to solve for x. We found that x equals 21. But let's check our work. So we're going to start off with the original equation. 7 over x equals 3 over 9. We can replace x with 21. We can check to make sure that we've correctly solved for x by making sure that this equation is true. Is it true that 7 over 21 is the same thing as 3 over 9? Let's take a look. We can simplify 7 over 21 by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 7. We get 1 over 3. We can also simplify 3 over 9 by dividing both numerator and denominator by 3. This also equals 1 over 3. So we were able to show that both sides are equal to each other, so we know that we've correctly solved for x. For example 3, you're going to cross multiply again to solve for x. We have 3 over 2 equals x over 4. Go ahead and try this example on your own, and then press play when you're ready. So we're going to cross multiply. 3 times 4 equals 2 times x. So we have 3 times 4 equals 2 times x. The 3 and the 4 are multiplied together, and the 2 and the x are multiplied together as well. Let's simplify this equation. We know that 3 times 4 equals 12. So 12 equals 2 times x. We want to isolate x, so let's remove this part by dividing both sides of the equation by 2. This will cancel out, and 12 divided by 2 equals 6, so 6 equals x. In other words, x equals 6. So we were able to solve for x using cross multiplication. Now let's check our work. So 3 over 2 equals x over 4. This is our original equation. But let's replace x with the 6 that we just found. Is this equation true? 3 over 2 is already in simplest form, but we can reduce 6 over 4 by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 2. What does this reduce to? This reduces to 3 over 2. So the equation is true, we've correctly solved for x. Sometimes you won't be able to get an exact answer. So sometimes you will be asked to round, like in this example. So here, once again, we're going to cross multiply to solve for x. However, notice that we are asked to round to the nearest tenth. And remember, we talked about rounding in the previous lesson. All right, so let's try out this example. We're going to cross multiply. So 9 times x will equal 10 times 5. Again, 9 times x equals 10 times 5. We cross multiplied. Now let's simplify this equation. We know that 10 times 5 is 50, so we have 9 times x equals 50. To solve for x, we need to divide both sides by 9 because division is the opposite of multiplication. X equals 50 divided by 9, which if you plug into your calculator, you get 5.555 and it keeps going. But remember, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So let's focus on the 10th place and look at the digit right after it, 5. We would round up, so when we round to the nearest tenth, we get that x is approximately equal to 5.6. And if you have questions about rounding, please let me know. Here's example 5. We're going to cross multiply to solve for x, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth. We have 7 over 59 equals 48 over x. So how do I rewrite this equation through cross multiplication? We can rewrite this as 7 times x equals 59 times 48. And remember, you can use your calculator. So 7 times x equals 59 times 48, which equals 2,832. To solve for x, we're going to divide both sides by 7. Remember, we want to isolate the x. We want x to be by itself. X equals 2,832 divided by 7, which is something like this, 404.5714, and it keeps going. But we're going to simplify this by rounding to the nearest tenth. Notice here, we will have to round up. So x is approximately equal to 404.6. Remember, when you round up, you have to increase that last digit by 1. Let's look at one last example for today. We have 90 over x equals 11 over 5. We're going to cross multiply to solve for x and then round to the nearest tenth. So we cross multiply. 90 times 5 equals x times 11. Again, that's 90 times 5 equals x times 11. And we can simplify this. 90 times 5 equals 450. Equals x times 11. And let's get rid of this times 11 by dividing 11 on both sides. 450 divided by 11 is the following. So you'll notice that it's not an exact answer. You get an ongoing decimal. 40.90909, and it just keeps going. But we're going to round to the nearest tenth. Our 10th place value is 9. and we look at the digit right after. Since 0 is less than 5, we round down. So 9 just stays the same. X is approximately 40.9. So today we learned how to cross multiply. To cross multiply means to go from this, A over B equals C over D, to this, A times D equals B times C. We're multiplying diagonally. Awesome job, and please remember to submit your notes on Canvas.